welcome to Good Game Pocket Edition, your pint-sized package for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. This week we were glued to our screens for one epic stoush after another in Total War Rome 2.
But first we take a walk on the weird side with The Killer is Dead.
The job. Killer is dead.
Killer is Dead tells the story of Mondo, a cyborg hitman who chases down international criminals. It starts weird and gets weirder, descending into a mix of repetitive combat and awkward romance scenes.
Sorry, baby. I got a job to do.
I thought this game really lacked focus.
Honestly, I thought it was a mess. The characters were awful, shallow, and annoying. And unfortunately, the combat really doesn't do anything to redeem it either.
Yes, this was disappointing average button mashy stuff. And the enemies you're fighting are just so repetitive. I gave it 4 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I found it hard to like anything about this. I gave it 3. But now for a more coherent dose of sci-fi with Killzone Mercenary.
1, go!
As the name suggests, you play a mercenary who sells his services to both sides in an ongoing conflict between humans and Helgans. This means you'll be dropping into various conflicts throughout Killzone's history, but instead of being a soldier on the front lines, you'll be doing covert missions like deactivating war technology to help turn the tide of the battles.
And finally, a decent first-person shooter on the Vita.
I know!
Yeah, it's about time. I liked how many futuristic gadgets they gave you. It meant I got to feel a bit like a sci-fi James Bond. Your merc controls his tech with a touchscreen, which is a neat tie into the actual touch gestures you perform. For instance, as he's hacking into computers, you'll be touching the right icons on screen. Killzone has always raised the bar a bit when it comes to visuals, and this is no exception. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, there aren't many shooters, especially on handheld, where I'll actually take the time to relax and do a few slow pans, but this was one of them. The game jumps between gleaming future cityscapes on Earth to the inhospitable Helgan homeworld, and it always looks stunning. They really have managed to shoehorn in a console-quality experience onto the Vita. This was great. I gave it 8.5.
Yeah, the Vita desperately needs more great games like this. I gave it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens. Over on Spawn Point this week, it was all about pirates versus ninjas. Let's start with the ninjas. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows takes the heroes in a half shell all the way back to their beat-em-up gaming origins. It draws inspiration from the movies, the recent TV series, as well as classic comics. Visually, the locations are great, and it's a unique art style for the Turtles. They look very reptilian, and I liked that. But then I picked up the controller, and just like a good ninja, the gameplay vanished.
It's such a shame, isn't it? I think perhaps they were a little overambitious. They tried to incorporate too many fighting game ideas, and it feels like maybe they didn't have the time to make it all work properly. I spent more time fighting with the camera and the controls than I did with the enemies.
I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan, so I really wanted to like this, but there's just so much broken with it. Sometimes the animations don't sync up, the combat moves are too slow so you can't get back into control, and the camera control is terrible / non-existent. It's a complete mess, and I'm legitimately upset about it, so I gave it 2 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I gave it 3. Now, the pirates finally get their shot. Yarr.
Here's Pirates.
Pirates! Showdown is a mobile strategy game that combines naval combat with a dash of town planning. With some salty sea dog skills, you can use your fleet to blast coastal towns into submission. Once you're in control, the town's income can be spent on upgrading both its defences and your fleets as well.
I found I had to strike the right balance between conquering and building. If I spent too much money on upgrading my towns, then my paltry fleet would be obliterated in battle. But pumping everything into your ships is risky, because a failed battle can mean not having enough town revenue to rebuild.
I thought they built a good strategy game foundation, but I just wish they added some extra bells and whistles, Bajo, like upgradable ships or maybe a multiplayer mode or something, but I still gave it an 8.
I gave it 7.5. Shall we set ourselves for the Ask Good Game desk, Hex?
To be sure, yar!
Yars.
Your pirate seems unenthusiastic.
Good game!
All right, Hex, what questions do we have today?
All right, well, how about we go with this one from Seb, who is in Hobart, Tasmania. Do you ever review a game without completing it? I'm wondering because between Spawn Point and regular Good Game, you seem to have a lot to play through some weeks.
Well, it all depends on the game, really. Something like Total War Rome 2, for example, we sunk heaps of hours into that before we did the review, but we didn't finish it, and it's not even really the kind of game you can finish.
Yeah, but something like Portal or a mobile game can be knocked off in an afternoon. Most AAA games that are around 7 to 12 hours usually aren't a problem for us to meet the deadline. Most importantly, I think, Bajo, is that we just go with our guts on this. If we feel like we've played enough of the game to accurately analyse it, then we just start writing. If we think we haven't played enough, though, we won't review it until we have.
Yeah, and we also swap games around the office to get other people's opinions and make sure we've covered all of the bases, especially if someone's a really big fan of that genre.
Yeah, and there are, of course, games like The Last of Us, which are heavily story-driven, and where getting to the end is really important, so we plan for that and make sure that we have enough time to do it justice.
And it also depends on how early we get a game. If we get a big, epic game a few weeks ahead of release and we get into it, then chances are we'll get through it in time. There has been the odd time, too, where we've gone back to a game and our opinion of it has changed. I certainly liked Duke Nukem Forever a lot less after the nostalgia shine wore off a few weeks later.
I'm back, baby.
Yes. Also, if the game is amazing, say in the case of Guild Wars 2, we tend to play a lot more of it in our own time as well, so the lines between work and recreation blur a little bit, but yeah, there are a lot of variables. Speaking of variables and reviews, I believe it's time for You Review.
And which game is on the chopping block this week, Hex?
Well, I'm curious to see what people thought of Pikmin 3.
Yeah, good choice. And at a glance, it seems like there's a lot of love for it. Like this from Nicholas, aka Dark Aurora, who wrote, "I remember the last 2 Pikmin games as if it was only yesterday. I was playing with my friend Victor on his purple GameCube. Nostalgia came rushing through my body when I saw that you reviewed it, mainly because I never thought there would never be another Pikmin ever again. Thank you, Miyamoto. Thank you." 8.5 stars.
And likewise, Goblin here had kind words for Shiggy's latest effort, writing, "Loved this game, best I've played in a while. For the best experience, I suggest using Wii remotes instead of the gamepad. 9.5 stars.
Right, well, H-Duck2 returns yet again.
Man, that guy plays everything, doesn't he?
Certainly does. And he writes, Pikmin 3 is one of the rare Nintendo games or series in the company's long history which isn't stupidly easy. Similar to some of Nintendo's finest series, Metroid or Legend of Zelda, this series is addictive, fun, has a great difficulty curve, and punishes you, sometimes, in a good way. The Mario series is starting to lose its touch and is becoming easy in a bad way. Pikmin 3 is fantastically devilish in that it mixes the strategy and adventure that makes Nintendo games so rewarding. With multiple ways to play, a long campaign, cute characters, beautiful graphics, it's hard to go wrong with the Pikmin series, and the third entry is the best, which makes the Wii U more attractive in terms of games. It's a return to form for Nintendo, and gives it a perfect 10 out of 10.
Nice. Well, let's see some of the negative reviews, but there's not really that many, although Llama Llama Duck King here seems to have a slight existential crisis, writing, "Why time?" 7 stars.
Why time? Why space? Why anything, Hex? Deep questions there, Mr. Llama Llama Duck King. But the lowest review came from Rob Antok, who wrote simply, "Picky," and gave it half a star.
Well, that certainly seems like a picky review. Yeah? I think it's picky.
Should we go back to the studio?
Yeah.
Good game.
If you're not familiar with the Total War games, then you're missing out on some of the deepest strategy gaming around.
Yes, and if you've never tried Total War, Rome 2 is a great place to start because it is easily the most refined Total War game yet.
Unlike the original Rome, as you start, you're free to choose from a whole range of factions other than Romans. And unlike previous games, there are actually 3 possible victory conditions now, either through military, economic, or cultural victories.
The map is broken up into various provinces, but rather than the old way of 1 city per province, each now has anywhere from 2 to 4 towns. One is always a larger capital city which has high city walls and defences, whereas others are smaller exposed settlements. The other big change is how armies work. Now you have to raise a general and then use the general to recruit units. As your armies fight, they rank up and gain some solid bonuses. So even once your general dies, your fighting force remains seriously tough. Navies have also had some big changes. Just like armies, you need to raise an admiral and then recruit ships through him. But best of all, your armies actually don't need navies to travel by sea. But of course, if they run into some actual battleships, then they're going to be in some serious trouble.
Plus, for the first time ever, land and sea battles merge. You can assault a port through sea and land your forces on the coast.
It also means navies just aren't limited to blockading anymore, but can actually capture cities on their own.
Well done.
Having said all that, I do find the naval combat a bit hard to handle. It's just not as much fun as the land battles. I like now that you can actually get AI to look after certain groups of units. I really liked that because you can let a group just look after themselves while you go focus on another part of the battle.
Yeah, and it's great that you can now assign stances to armies and navies in the campaign map.
We hunger for battle.
For example, one lets you force march an army, which doubles their movement.
Master, curse you all.
There's also edicts that you can issue over a province if you control it. One, for example, is the Bread and Games Edict, which makes everyone happy and gives the province a boost to public order, while another simply raises the taxes you collect.
Managing your empire is a lot easier in general, I thought. Although they have added this new food mechanic to worry about.
It's so good to be back in ancient Rome. I just love this setting. It's so good for games.
Yeah, I just loved being back into besieging big castle towns. And it's great that now your city walls can get proper siege weapons to defend with, and how you can pour boiling oil on enemies marching through your gates. Ah, that's awesome.
And I love that there's now that aiming arc when you manually aim artillery. Even after 30 hours into this campaign, you'll barely feel like you're scratching the surface, and that's a good thing. I gave this 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
This is a tremendously rich strategy experience with so much depth to it, so I gave it 9.5 as well.
Good game.
Well, that's all we can fit into our pockets for this week, but don't forget you can tune into full episodes of Good Game on Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. on ABC2.
Yes, and next week, it's weird, it's wonderful, it's Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn.
For victory and fortune.
Until next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo.